So what we'll do is we'll make a start. For those people who don't know me, my name's Andy Riley. I've been part of the Total Materia team for a couple of years, mainly talking to companies about how to manage their material systems. I'm going to take you through the webinar today. Hopefully it won't be too much of death by PowerPoint. And if you have any questions, just ask through the chat facility and the question facility, and I'll try and get back to you, or even maybe answer them as we go. You can see on the screen the agenda. So it will go from everything about who we are, how we operate, and then how hopefully as an outcome from this webinar, how we can discuss together with you about your projects. So with we'll try and make some progress now. Hopefully everybody's arrived, got a coffee and all the important things in life. So once again, my name's Andy Riley. I mainly work with companies who are managing their material system or want to connect all their engineers to materials information across their organization. Total Materia is one of our products. The company who makes it is CET Metals AG. And CET Metals is a Swiss company, headquarters in Zurich, and our technical center and most of our team are based in Belgrade, Serbia. I myself are based in the UK, in the north of England, and we work closely together all the time. Inside the CET Metals team, the majority of the people are actually connected with bringing together materials information and materials properties. And that's about 38 people now. And they are materials engineers, chemical engineers, and some mechanical engineers who are bringing that data together. And we've been doing it for around 20 years. And since about 2017, 2018, we've been going beyond material properties reference database into managing the materials information inside larger companies. And that's really where my experience comes in. In addition to our subject matter experts, we have a large support team, and many of you who are today's Total Materia customers are regularly dealing with our technical support team. And of course, we have an IT team who put together the platform that we rely on and manage all the security, performance, all the other aspects. So it's a good team. It works closely together, and they're very focused just on materials information. And in doing that, there's also a very strong focus in the processes to both organize and manage that data. And we've been ISO 9001 certified for a number of years. And more recently, we've enhanced that further with the ISO 27701 GDPR standards, because of course, in today's business environment, we have to be very professional about how we're managing users' data. And the last one, which we've added to this space, is the Vericode software security process. And this is really to make sure that our processes are protecting your systems. So our software is checked to make sure there's no malware, so it can't be hacked easily, so it can't transport any issues into your development environment. And of course, these two last topics are critical in today's enterprise environment, because IT teams and people like this want to make sure that anything that's used by the organization is both secure and protecting people's privacy. So for us, those two are critical standards. And it really helps us when we start to talk about our main products. And we have two key products. One you might know as Total Materia, which is a reference database of material properties with selection tools, exports, and all sorts of things like that, and Total Materia Integrator, which we're mainly going to talk about today. And that's about your private information and also the configuration and customization for that information store to work very well with your people and processes inside the organization. For your information, Total Materia, if you go to totalmateria.com, if you don't know it, you can take out a free trial. You can see all the different kind of data sets we have. And I think the pricing is already on the page as well. So, you know, make sure you do that if you're not aware of the tools already. And the kinds of challenges those two systems address are a bit different. So inside Total Materia, we focus on commercial grade materials. So they're things that you can buy to build your products. And there's just over 700,000 commercial materials in there. And they're metals, polymers, lubricants, coatings, wood, ceramics, composites, lots and lots of different families organized in a very logical way. And also the delivery conditions, you know, a pipe, a tube, a plate, for the same material, for example, or different heat treatments. A lot of that data is organized by standards. So ISO, Euronorm, SAE, Lloyd's, for example. And there's over 37,000 different standards from 80 different organizations across the world. So if you want to know what a particular material is in China compared to Brazil, you know, we can look at those grades and the comparison between them. And that's probably the most used function inside the Total Materia product. And as I briefly mentioned, all of this information, this data and these properties are organized in a single taxonomy. What that means is there's you can compare apples with apples as much as possible across the database. You can find information through a clear logical process that is consistent through all the material behaviors. And with that data, we update it every month. And that's why we have such a big team of people to create and collate that information. And we deliver between 4,000 and 50,000 updates to that data each month, 12 months a year. They can be new properties, new materials, new legislation. You know, it's a very significant churn on the data, and you can also see any or the history of any of those materials as well through what we call tracker. And as I just briefly mentioned, regulations, there's a very significant influence and tool set available to manage regulation compliance, whether it's REACH, ROS, Proposition 65, and multiple other regulations. And we can discuss that, both how it helps an expert and how it helps a wider engineering team in conjunction with Integrator. And perhaps the most important part is the team of people to support and help you, and in some ways help us, because by listening to the requests from our customers and our users about, I need to find a material to do X, or I need to find the properties for this material, it helps us build that list of data we need to go and collect and source. So we are here to help our customers, and that's part of our business model as well, of course. But also that helps us keep going and looking for more data, which goes back into the database. So that's Total Materia. If you want to try it, go to totalmateria.com, take out a free trial, talk to some of my colleagues about how they can support you, and hopefully that could solve a lot of issues for you. In the integrator space, we really work on making that data your own. One of the most common projects that we address is with enterprises that have their own naming for materials, that they don't want people looking through, or their general users looking through 700,000 possible materials. They want to focus on the 20, 100, 1,100 materials that they use as preferred materials inside their organization. And also they want to make it really simple to find information. And we'll be talking a lot about that as we go through the presentation. Also, one of the things that we spend a lot of time doing is assisting in populating PLM, ERP, simulation systems with reference data, or even modified reference data. So it could be that if somebody's using 3D Experience, Teamcenter, ANSYS Minerva, or something like this, they need to find data to put into that system. And that's also one of the projects that we work closely with in using Integrator to drive data into those areas. Also, if a company's been operating for a number of years, or maybe it's a combination of companies that have been purchased, we help them in terms of bringing those data sources together and connecting people to the same source of data. And that's often one of the biggest benefits we deliver in this area. And we can turn those historical data sets into a single digital reference. And we have both the processes and the people to do that work. And doing that allows innovation, whether it just be to find properties that are used across different parts of the organization, or to apply machine learning tools to fill gaps in current materials knowledge. And without doubt, the area that probably delivers the biggest cost benefit to an organization is by optimizing its material usage, both in terms of making better buying decisions, as well as people avoiding risk or avoiding additional supplier relationships where needed. So that's really what Integrator does, and that's in addition to what Total Materia does in terms of reference data. So right, I'm going to try and go a bit quicker now so that you get to see something about what we do. And of course, working across the organization, we talk to lots of other different stakeholders in the organization. Sometimes it's a materials engineer taking the lead. Often it's purchasing. Often it's the CAE team. Or it's people trying to solve that compliance challenge for their organization. And when we go further into looking into that, you know, what we're really creating is that consolidated source of materials information. And doing that helps solve, you know, significant challenges for some of the people inside an organization. If they're a PLM person, or even a CAD person, a PLM person could be thinking about how they work in a part-centric, model-centric, or drawing-centric environment, how to attach material information to those three different states. A CAD person can often could be thinking, okay, how do I put the right information on a drawing or a model annotation to convey supplier specification, all these pieces. And certainly, you know, that's my origin that's my history in that area. In the CAE team, there's that constant search for additional properties to take advantage of today's simulation tools, whether that could be fatigue data or corrosion data in the mechanical space, or electrical data as well. Inside our reference database, we have a very large amount of electrical properties information, and it's about to get a lot bigger. The purchasing team also play a major role in using a material system. That's not only to understand the specification from the engineering team, but also to look at possible suppliers or localization across the world. And we provide tools that allow them to do that, and with Integrator to document it so that they don't have to keep reassessing decisions. And as I mentioned multiple times already, the compliance team more and more are driving the behavior and the avoiding risk for the organization, and we allow them to have all those tools. So what do we bring? If we think about that person who's often leading this kind of project, their biggest question is how to manage the data across their company. What we do is, number one, we get control of the data. We try and use as much commercial available data as possible because it's cheaper, it's accurate, it's updated, and it's created by organizations that you might be buying materials from. We spend a lot of time talking about how to make the system easy to use, and we're going to come on to that in just a couple of minutes. And also, we want an engineer to be able to run this system not as a full-time job, but as part of their major role. And in that area, we bring significant expertise. Fundamentally, the reason why we've got that expertise is because we've already delivered a commercial materials database with 700,000 commercial grade materials, which is well organized, and it works with a high level of performance with thousands of users every day. So we know how to organize data very effectively. It's delivered on a modern IT platform, so it's HTML5, Angular, all these great things that run through secure web browsers. So it's very quick to deploy, but also very secure. We're also quite unique in terms of a materials organization of, if you need people that can take a group of PDF documents and type them into a database, we have those people, we have those skills, whether it be doing it through automated routines or with people physically typing. That's the life we live. And as I mentioned briefly before, the way we operate is part of our business model. With Total Materia Integrator and Total Materia, it's an annual subscription. So the best way for us to secure your next year's subscription is by delivering great service this year. And that's really what we focus on. So our success is absolutely connected to your use of the system and your success with the system. So just to be quick, so Total Materia provides reference data. Because of that reference data, the way it's organized, you get all the alternative materials available to you as well. It's a web platform, so collaborating just simply through sharing links. You have all the selection tools. We have tools that identify materials or metals through scanning. And one of the big things is we have connection to 26 different export formats and growing. And I'm really hoping that we grow that even further very quickly to some of the online tools and online services in that area. Once we step into Integrator, we really start to focus down on maybe the approved materials list. So instead of talking about 700,000 commercial grade materials, people are focused on the 1,000 that they may be using in their organization, or maybe it's 150 or 20. We work very closely with the users and the definition to make it an efficient environment, of course, connected through the right IT policies. We can import existing data, existing material definitions, and that can also be from material cards from simulation. So for example, if your current material information is a group of Abacus material cards or LS Dyna MAP24 cards, we can import that, and that can be the foundation for your internal material system. We can, of course, include test data. We provide we have access to a RESTful API. We can install the system inside your secure IT environment, which we do for defense organizations, for example. And we have significantly extended integration capabilities through to PLM, to other systems that you might be connecting through both through standards and dedicated interfaces, working with partners. So that's really what the two different solutions do. As I said before, if you want to know more about the left-hand side of that page, totalmateria.com, and there's also a whole group of webinars available and coming up on that area. Integrator on the right-hand side, we're now going to get into a bit more. And really, as I mentioned before, you know, when we're moving to Integrator, we need to get users to use the system. In fact, I should have said, if I go back here, actually, Integrator is sold as an enterprise license. What that means is everyone in andyriley.com, for example, can log in and use the system. And that can be hundreds and thousands of users, all accessing the system from that license. So when we talk about a user experience, what we're really focusing on is what are the key priorities, is that a lot of those users are going to be infrequent users. So if we look at a lot of our systems, average session time is around 7 seconds. And what that is somebody logging in, finding the information, exporting it to whichever system it is, session over. And they might only do that twice a year. So it has to be super easy to use and easy to find the information that they want, and for them to trust that information. And also, you've got to connect it to people that can either help or validate that, yes, this is the right data. And that's really what we do with our user experience. And it has to be easier to use the system we create together than it is for people to look in their own Excel file, to ask a friend, to Google or whatever. And that's really our expression of success, is when we're achieving that. And that's what we do. And we do that in a couple of different ways. We either provide a home page, which is actually with our latest graphics, with a nice, friendly interface that allows them to access, and of course, customized training for their system and make requests to their administrators. Or we go very functional, you know, find the information quickly and move on. And of course, the reason you might choose these different areas is because you want people to focus on their key role. You know, we want it to be as simple as possible. But the way that we tend to be going at the moment is, as materials, compliance, and innovation become more interesting topics for engineers, we're providing more information. So the latest area, you know, this is all customized for our customer, per customer, of course, giving a method of communication, also making sure that people can regularly get help, and that connects back to that idea that if people are only using it twice a year, they might have forgotten how to do a material selection process and create a report and create a graph. So we have to make sure people can get updated easily, and also our experience has shown that you have to give people the chance to raise questions and ideas. If you want them to use the system, they've got to take ownership of that, and that means asking for a new material, raising a question about a material, or having a support question about maybe the values even, and we can handle all of that work. And we also work quite hard to reduce the number of tools or options available to fit the user's needs. So here we see my good friend Nicola. He's got his list of materials, and he's got a certain number of tools that he can work with in that area. Whereas Maria, she has greater capabilities, and she has more options. The screen gets bigger, the number of options she has, but of course that's probably because her role has greater requirements. And we can need to do the same in terms of the more the classic graphics as well. So this is our newest graphical system, and this is our current one. And everything we're delivering is software as a service. It's fully integrated into the IT validation and credentials approach. We license it, as I mentioned before, as an enterprise, but also as a consortium. One of our interesting projects in the UK is around a consortium of 9 companies, all working together on the system. It can be delivered on site or in an air gap network. We have, of course, change management systems. And something I haven't mentioned is the system is delivered simultaneously in 26 different languages. What that means is if you've got a team in India or in Spain or whatever, they're all working in the national language. So I was just going to try and answer a question at the same time. So we just got asked the question: doing creep data? Absolutely, yes. Creep corrosion analysis. So yes, we do, and you can of course add your own as well with Integrator. And because it's that single sign-on, because it's that web architecture and things like that, it is deployed almost instantly. So it's very quick to deliver in that area. And the process we're trying to follow in this area is one that you might recognize from your own company. So typically a group of engineers have a specification or an idea or maybe an existing material they're using. What they would do is, of course, you take advantage of Total Materia to understand what properties are available in that area. And that would both be mechanical, physical properties in this area, maybe composition, using the advanced properties, fatigue, creep, corrosion, metallography data in this area. And maybe they might still decide, okay, well, we either need to do some testing or add some additional test data, or maybe add some data directly from a supplier, particularly in polymers. This might well happen where we have some data, but then because of relationship with a polymer producer, you've got additional data. We can bring that together with Integrator, and then we can still use the tools within Total Materia to look for cross-referencing and all the compliance data to check that it complies with key regulations across the world. We can go through the material approval cycles, and we have multiple ways of managing the workflow in that area, including just integration with other tools and connection with PLM and ERP, and then sharing that data across the organization in different ways. And, of course, we have different ways of describing the way that workflow operates, or that flow goes between material selection, curating the data to know what's good, supersetting it across multiple sources of data, then applying the life cycle and communicating it. And that process we recognize in a lot of enterprises we see. And our particular skill set really comes in both that organization and planning, everything from the naming of your materials and how that can help define search and usability. We also have a very nice capability for monitoring both standards and regulations for your preferred materials. And it's really interesting. In the past few months, we've been dealing with this more and more. And basically, over 4 to 12 hours a month, we're checking the materials and the standards that you might be using, providing a report for you and an action, requesting some actions for you to decide on. But that is becoming a more and more interesting, regular conversation. We have significant experience in application integration, and we also have another product coming pretty soon in this area of additional properties. And no surprise, it's machine learning tool set that we're already using in certain areas. And another area that is pretty unique for us as well is if you have material standards and you want to connect that and you want to share them with your suppliers, we can put those into Total Materia. We can offer them as additional data. We can have a number of capabilities in that area which help you communicate to your suppliers for them to be able to find materials that are compliant with those standards, and also just speed that communication. So that's another area that we can talk about if that's of interest to you. So, you know, when you're operating this system, you have people that set up those materials. And although in the most automated systems, and I'll talk about that in a moment, it's great fun, there's actually very little to show. So what I'm going to try and do now is show you what it looks like when we're actually doing it live. So this is an example of a material inside Integrator and how we can add data and modify it accordingly. Things to notice very quickly. So this particular material has an internal name. You know, that's not some commercial designation or something like that. It's, you know, this is material number 7. Then this is what the data looks like, and you know, this data is part of the mechanical properties. And down this right-hand side, you're starting to see some of the standard as well as user-defined property groups that we operate in this area. So, you know, we've got the cross-referencing to other materials. We've got stress, strain, fatigue data, but we've also got other areas here as well that might be unique to your materials. And what I'm going to do is just show you how this is kind of edited by what we call a power user, and we'll come back to talk about that in a little bit. But you'll see how it operates. So you can see that particular condition and the properties attached to it. Then what we can do is look at the physical properties of it, some different data, and this is a power user, so it's deliberately relatively complex, but you can see the graph, with different sets of data. You can do, you know, some pretty straightforward functions there, but then you probably want to start adding more information. So, you know, this is what somebody with the right authority in the system would do. They can add a particular property to measured by a certain standard, and you can see it in the list of data or conditions, as we say, attached to that information. By picking the different properties, you're just picking off lists. You can create your own as user-defined properties, but otherwise, you know, you create a value, and then you can keep going through this. And I'm going to Maria, who's recording this, types significantly quicker than most people I know, but this is absolutely real time. There's no acceleration involved in any of this. But as you see, she's putting the different values for the graph. It's not the most complex graph in the world, but I think you get exactly the point. And then what you'll see is a similar kind of thing for a different condition. And then what we'll do is bring that graph in from some Excel data. And the interesting thing we see is that what you're seeing here is a very manual, what I would describe as a manual process. More and more companies either want to do this as a single import file, which we can do, but it's the world's most boring demo because you just pick an Excel file and the whole thing comes in, or they want us to do it for them. One of the services that we actually offer, we call it librarian service, is we manage the material system for you, and adding all this data, adding all the users and things like this. That's exactly one of the services we provide for companies. more and more, in fact. So here you see we've added the two curves with all the data, and you can see different sets of information. But it's pretty straightforward. If this is the data that you're used to seeing, it's a big help in that area. But then this is the complex view. For an average user, depending on their role, we'll be simplifying this and removing data that's no use to them. So you see all these kind of things. I think we're nearly at the end. Yep, very nearly the end. Okay. So hopefully you got an idea of what it looks like to manage a material inside Integrator. And what that allows us to do when we're organizing those materials is both take advantage of the way that the Total Materia team organize materials, but also create your own organization and levels of data inside it. So we have four levels and then multiple conditions available for you to be able to describe material. As I said, we can also use import tools as well. One of the things that we do more and more is inside Total Materia Integrator, you might have your unique name, like M07 for a material, but actually then link it to the data that's in the Total Materia reference database, which is updated every month and things like this. So we just manage links rather than data. That's a pretty smart way to avoid duplication and life cycling lots of data. We saw a bit of that user-defined properties. We can do bulk export as well as bulk import, and the system runs. So as I've mentioned, Total Materia is 700,000 commercial grade materials. It's something like 60 million unique properties. Integrator is exactly that same format. It can run with millions upon millions of materials. Its SQL Server is the architecture underneath it, and it's using the full power of the Microsoft stack to do that. But one of the things to emphasize is that the data that's inside Total Materia Integrator is always your data. Yes, we provide templates that can help you bring data in, can populate that system, and it's always your data. We have unique administrator roles. We can deal with material approval. Everything is tracked for data. And of course, we can also both import documents, maybe it's a PDF or pictures and things like that, but also link to document stores, external data stores. And what we do with the integrator approach is of course use the platform, but we always adapt it to be your process. The data model stays pretty consistent because that allows us to keep a very high level of maintenance and things like that. But there's always additional pieces, different ways of describing it, different ways of naming it, which is your knowledge. And one of the key ways that we make that very easy to manage from your perspective is using what we call departments. And what we're trying to avoid is that for any engineer, when they're looking for a material, they don't see 5 pages of possible materials. It's the classic Google scenario, whereas if it's not on the first page, then people don't look. What we want to do is use what we call departments to organize information so that they're seeing a list of maybe 25 different materials. And so a material and people can belong to a department. The department might be connected with a project or a particular activity, and it becomes easy to use. So maybe the leader of a department knows exactly which materials he has in the area. And it can be used across the organization. So you have different departments managed by different people. And it works very well indeed. And what we're trying to do is for the general users, They might be just working just off the approved materials and they can request more material. Different power users across the organizations can check and feel ownership for the materials they're using. And the system administrator is an IT, well, it's somebody who's maybe working on a help desk role. So it's user IDs, passwords, system options, but in no way is any of these roles a full-time role. You know, as you can imagine, a user is just grabbing data. A power user is using the tools that we provide to really complement their existing work. And a system admin might be a system admin for your Microsoft Outlook system, your IT system, your PLM system. It's not a unique function. And doing that really allows the power user to really, you know, focus on their expertise. Really is, you know, be an engineer. That is really what we want. It might be a materials engineer, of course, but it's using that experience not as an IT person or web designer or anything like that. And the whole goal is to make it really easy for users to find data and be confident in it when they're using it. So the way that user management works, and we try to make it as easy as possible, is number one, the way we manage people's data. It complies with ISO 27701. There's a mistake on that slide, which follows all the GDPR principles. It can be connected to your IT system, your Active Directory, or single sign-on to make life even easier. And it's role-based. It tries to use words that people recognize. And although, so I'm going to show you a short demo in a moment. To create a user is very straightforward. You know, first name, last name, the level they are in the system: administrator, power user, user, and the departments they're part of. Also connected with that user, which property groups they can see. And this is that idea of simplifying the user interface as much as possible, so that they can get to what they need as well. And just for your information, we also have the option to manage which export tools they have. We've not really talked about export very much, but imagine somebody's a CAD user. They use NX, Creo, or they use NX, for example. So in their automatic export, or in their one-click export, or even directly inside their NX application, they'll access Total Materia Integrator and pull information very quickly. So it's one click. Instead of giving that user, you know, 10 different CAD systems and 25 CAE systems to select from, we focus down on the tools that those people use. And even if they're a power user, we can then say which materials they can operate. So just very quickly on, so in terms of direct integrations, we offer 4 different ways to integrate with applications. One is through a very flexible approach, single property selection, then export in a final format. Second way is through what we call a one-click export, which is configured for the user. We put in a list which tools they use, and the user then says, okay, I want to apply my company standard to creating an LS Dyna export material card, 1 or 2 clicks in that case, and then they have that data. Third way is bulk data. We could output all of your LS Dyna material cards for a particular department in neutral or encrypted format, or in Abacus format, or ANSYS or whatever, into a directory. And lastly is through direct application integration into SolidWorks and other ones, so that inside your application, for example, SolidWorks, you have an icon, you click it, and you're directly using Total Materia Integrator. And this is really a quick look at how it looks like when you're managing users. It's pretty straightforward. No real excitement. You know, is it an active user? You can see where you're picking the different levels. And then, you know, some reason we also Serbia. That's obviously because that's where our technical center is, which department it is, say which other materials they can see from other departments, and which property groups. So for that particular user, that they could choose not to see supplier data, for example. So very, very simple to manage. And you know, people do this all day, every day, if that's what they want to do, or sometimes they even ask us, because we obviously have tools to do this by the 1,000 user as well. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight into what we do. A huge part of that is the people that we bring to discuss with you about your projects. But when we're talking about a project, we have a pretty straightforward process we go through. And the way we tend to do that is we do a sales presentation to you, which is much more about live demonstration than obviously videos that you've seen today and things like this. The sales activity is really making sure that what you want to do is what we do. We can also give you the pricing. Pricing for Total Materia Integrator is very straightforward. You know, we can usually give you numbers that turn out to be pretty accurate very quickly. We then have a process of understanding your requirements, building a presentation and probably a demonstration as well, to show that we understand your data and what you want to achieve, and also for you to see if it achieves your objectives. And then we typically provide that system as a test system for you for a period of time, and to come to a conclusion. And at the end of it, there'll probably be some license for the software. We might do some data work for you, and we'll also, of course, provide support. And this really only takes a few weeks to achieve. But we find this process is very good at uncovering what we're trying to achieve. Build a project plan that gives a system that you could deploy. Probably, so typically our deployment time is between 8 and probably 22 weeks. And a lot of that time is actually for our customer to make a decision. But for us, you know, our work is around importing the data, configuring the exporters, developing what the naming schema is as well. But you know, we have a process flow that works in terms of how we help you understand the value and the benefits of the system that we're creating. So really, that's all I was going to say. You know, if you want to know more, then you know, feel free to contact me or Natalia in this case, or Tim or Luca or whoever else you deal with. But we're very happy to talk to you about this. Very happy to share all our experiences that we've built up over the past couple of years on some very interesting projects. So if you have any questions, please let us know. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.